Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Unfound Podcast Channel on YouTube. I am, of course, Unfound's host, Ed Denzel. I hope everybody has had a fantastic March. Me, it's been a pretty good month. My sleep continues to get better month after month. I'm almost sleeping, well, I wouldn't say almost, but I'm sleeping better than I have since November. So with each month, it continues to get a little better. I'm actually averaging kind of in the top, like high 6 hours of sleep now, which is something that was unthinkable just a couple months ago. I mean, seriously, I don't know if you could tell when I would do the live show or whatever, or even like the Unfound Now or whatever. I was so sleep deprived. All of January, we'll even go back to December, but January, and I would say half of February, it was pretty bad. But I don't feel that way now, and that is spectacular. I have a very interesting disappearance lined up for you today, and that would be the recent disappearance of Mason McKay for this episode of Unfound Now. He went missing in Las Vegas, yes, my former hometown, Las Vegas, Nevada, not New Mexico, February 18th, seemingly, of 2025. He's a white guy. He's 44 years old. And he lived in Boulder City, Nevada, another town that I'm familiar with, having lived in southern Nevada for 13 and a half years. But I found records that show that Mason at one time also lived in Utah. As you are listening to this, and you should be watching too, because I have a video map session in the middle of this where it's just not a picture. It's actually a video where I'm moving the cursor around and everything. So please, if you're just listening to this, it's going to be a little difficult in the middle. If you're just listening, you're going to have to watch because I'm showing you some different routes of cars, buses, and where Mason was seen. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please share it. Please subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends and neighbors about this YouTube channel. It's amazing. At least a couple times a week, people find this channel and are like, oh, I thought this was only a podcast. And man, you have so much additional material here. This is one of the best true crime channels, at least for disappearances out there. I said, yeah, I know. It should have way more than 18,000 subscribers. It should, but it doesn't. But I think there may be some reasons for that. But please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, do what you can to make this channel as popular as possible. I remind all of you, of course, I've been doing these Unfound Nows for also almost 5 years now, but I want to remind all of you that I do these episodes, this monthly episode series for education purposes, for my own education and for all of yours, for publicity, getting word out there about these recent disappearances, and also for insight. I think you might find it interesting what I think about when I read new disappearance stories. And I also remind you that I only use public documents for these episodes. I've not spoken to anybody in Mason's family. I'm just going off what is written, and I try to keep that in mind when I do my analysis. I don't try to get too deep into the weeds like I might do at patreon.com, where I write the blog for the disappearances that are covered on the podcast every Friday. So please keep that in mind. And if you'd like to support what we do here, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, or you can support us through PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. And you could also join this YouTube channel by hitting the button below. The 3 topics, the 3 points of interest, the 3 points of education for today's disappearance. Number 1, getting it right. Number 2, the view from the outside. And number 3, searching high and very low. And what's going to be unique about this Unfound Now is I'm going to actually do point number 1 as I go through the map portion of this episode. And like I said, it's just not a map. It's actually a video with me moving the cursor around everything. So please watch and listen as I go through point number one. And in fact, I'm going to do that right now. And then after the video part is over, we'll go back to me putting pictures up of Mason, and I'll go to then points number 2 and 3. All right, the map portion of this episode coming up right now. Okay. I'm going to do something a little different than has been done on all of the other Unfound Nows. And that is, I'm going to go through point number 1, getting it right, while going over this map. Usually I do the map and then all 3 points are after the map, but this time I think it's best to be able to show you my point about point number 1, getting it right. So here we go. We are looking at a satellite view of Boulder City, and you see that little blue line there. Of course, when you see the blue line, that means that is a car traveling from one location to another. And if I were to change this over to walking, you'll see that that turns to dots. Of course, I'm going to bring it back to car. And what does it look like with the bus? Because that is relevant to this disappearance. What does it look like when it's a bus? There you go. It gives you different colors, showing how maybe the changes in buses that have to be done to get from Boulder City into the heart of Las Vegas. So keep that in mind. Now, the reason number 1 is called getting it right is because all the facts in a disappearances are hard enough just when you know what the facts are and they are correct. They're hard enough as it is just with all the right stuff. But they get extremely more difficult when you see competing stories. You see different stories that maybe were true at one time that haven't been updated, and poor reporting, lazy reporting, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of different ways that information can get messed up. And as you get further and further away from when the disappearance happened, it's harder and harder and harder to determine, well, what exactly were the circumstances? That is what's going on with Mason McKay's disappearance at this time. I'm recording it on March 30th of 2025. And so we're talking about a month and a half since he went missing, and it's a little cloudy regarding all of this. And I'm going to get into it right now. All right. So the story is, and I'll read first. I'm going to read from NamUs, and then we'll go to what else has been written about Mason's disappearance. And I will show you the problem. NamUs says Mason got on an RTC bus in Boulder City, Nevada, on February 16th, 2025 at 1931 hours. That is, 7:30 in the evening. He was last seen getting off an RTS bus at Maryland Parkway and Harmon Boulevard in Las Vegas on February 18th, 2025. So it's a little hard to understand. He gets on the bus, so they don't have any video of him getting off the bus on that day. Surely he was not riding bus. This is certainly not funny, but certainly he was not riding on a bus for a day and a half. There's that. Now I'm going to zoom in on this area where he got off the bus on the 18th. And that is essentially, to keep this easy for all of you, this is essentially the UNLV campus, University of Nevada at Las Vegas. Was on that campus many, many times back in the day. And in fact, when I lived, if you're interested, when I lived in Las Vegas, I lived way down here on East Tropicana. Down, where is it? Right here. In this area, I lived there from 99 until 2005. And so going up Tropicana, I would go right by the UNLV campus all the time. I saw the Thomas and Mack Center where they play basketball, all of that. This essentially, Maryland Parkway is right here. Harmon is right there where the blue dot ends. Right here. Got off a bus at UNLV at 1 in the morning on the 18th. So like I said, about not quite a day and a half between him being seen in Boulder City and then him getting off at UNLV at 1 in the morning. His phone had been turned off since February 18th. Mason has several medical conditions, which he takes meds for and did not take with him. Find that interesting, being that he was just 44 years old. His eyeglasses appear to be missing in the last photo of him as he gets off the bus. There is actually a picture of him that will accompany this video that shows him sitting in the bus, does not have glasses on, but it's certainly a picture from the bus. So once again, to zoom this out, Boulder City way down here in where the green line goes, and up here where the red line ends is approximately where he got off the bus, but it was essentially a day and a half later at the UNLV campus. So now I want to read a different article, once again, getting it right. The Boulder City Police is asking for your help to find a man who's now considered missing and endangered. 44-year-old Mason McKay was last seen in Boulder City on February 16th. When he texted, he had gotten on the RTC bus and did not know where he got off. Police said McKay takes medications for seizures, which he left at home and may need medical attention. Police say McKay was last seen with a faded black High Sierra backpack and a navy blue Patagonia ball cap. If you have any information on Mason McKay's whereabouts, please contact the Boulder City Police Department at mdubois@bcnv.org. Now, this article came out on February 26th. The very next day, on February 27th, this article was updated. And it says, missing and endangered 44-year-old Mason McKay was last seen exiting a bus at Blue Diamond Road and South Durango at 8:15 p.m. on February 16th. So once again, the original article, once again, what's on NamUs, says that he wasn't seen again until February 18th, getting off a bus essentially at the UNLV campus. But now this article says, oh, wait, he was seen getting off the bus later that evening. So he's down in Boulder City. And then approximately 8:15, an hour later, not quite an hour later, 45 minutes later, he is seen getting off the bus at, let me see if I can add another location on here. We'll just do this. I'm going to put Boulder Highway, or no. Blue Diamond Road and South Durango. Let's see where it takes us. So I guess what we're seeing here, first of all, it's all one color, which means he could have taken the same bus to this location. So he gets on in Boulder City, rides the same bus, doing all of this up here to, but it's the thing is, the question here is, though, at least right now in Las Vegas, where it would be 1:13 p.m. on this Sunday, that trip takes 2 hours. Whereas according to this bus trip, I guess in the evening that would make a difference. This bus trip only took 45 minutes. Now, how far is this if you're going to drive it? Let's just say you don't have to make all the stops. What does a car trip say? 40 minutes. So if we are to believe this bus did not make any stops. So this, once again, we have to get it right. This seems unlikely. That he got on Boulder City it got on the bus at Boulder City, and then 45 minutes later, once again, if I'm doing I hate when they do military time, 1931 hours is 7:30 p.m., and he is seen getting off the bus that same evening at 8:15 a.m. That's p.m. That's 45 minutes. In a car, it takes 40 minutes. And so that would be going like 60, 65, 70 miles an hour, because a lot of this is highway. The bus obviously cannot go that fast. So how did he get there in 45 minutes? Something's not right here. I don't know if they're getting the original time wrong in Boulder City, or they're getting the time wrong at when he got off here at Blue Diamond in South Durango, way over here. I don't know. Something's not right here. In addition, of course, we were led to believe the next time he was seen, it was at UNLV. Well, now we know that's changed. It seems the next time he was seen was way over here. And if you just want to see how much different those two locations are, I'll just type in UNLV. These two locations are nowhere near each other. To show you that. By car, it's a half hour. By bus, it's an hour and 26 minutes. And if you walked it, it's almost 5 hours. So these two locations are nowhere near each other. Now, there is an additional piece of information here, and I'm going to zoom in on this Durango and Blue Diamond. This is, once again, an area I'm very familiar with. You have to realize that a lot of this stuff, these developments and everything, weren't even there when I moved away 13 years ago, but I'm still familiar with this area. So this is where he approximately got dropped off, right here at Blue Diamond and South Durango. And what it says is he was seen walking north. Did we have him on video walking north? Did the bus driver remember? I don't know. But he was seen walking north on South Durango. Now, the way you understand that is the reason this is called South Durango. Of course, there are roads going both ways, both north and south on South Durango. In fact, I'm sure it's like a 4-lane road. Any road going, what we would say, lined up north and south, I think the dividing is Sahara. So you're on South Durango until you get to Sahara Avenue going north, and then it becomes North Durango. No matter if you're going north and south, it's called North Durango, and anything south of Sahara is called South Durango. It's just how you have to understand everything in Las Vegas. It's the same way with all of these roads that run north and south. Rainbow, which I used to live on as well, Jones, Decatur, they're all the same. In fact, just to show you, so if you're reading anything about this in South Durango, what does that mean? How could it be going north on South Durango? It's just the name of the street. You can drive both north and south on it. So now if you look at this map, you can see it's North Durango right there. And what is this? This is Charleston. And this is Durango. So now we have South Durango right there. See how it says South Durango? And then you eventually go up here, and then it'll be labeled North Durango. Right in here is where it changes from one to the other. Now, if you're wondering regarding streets in Las Vegas that go east and west, it's the same thing. But the dividing is Las Vegas Boulevard. So if you're on Las Vegas Boulevard and you're facing north and you make a left on Tropicana, that would be West Tropicana. Whereas if you're on Las Vegas Boulevard pointing north and you make a right on Tropicana, that's East Tropicana. And once again, that's the same for all those roads as well. Tropicana, Flamingo, Spring Mountain, Sahara, Charleston, the whole way up. So that's the dividing area. Right there for east-west roads, it's Sahara. For north and south roads, I think it's Sahara. It just shows you how long I haven't been there. But it says he was walking north on South Durango. So he was walking, he got dropped off, and he was going up the screen, I guess you could say. This is noteworthy to me because if he was, I'd be, as far as him being still alive now, I'll get into that later. I'd be a little concerned if he got off and was walking south. Because you know why? Because this turns into desert pretty quick. You can see that there. Whereas by walking north on South Durango, going north this direction, up this way, that's going into a more populated area. Something to keep in mind. Now, what's noteworthy is if we're to believe the sighting on the 16th, we don't have any, what did he do the rest of that night into the next day? And remember, he wasn't seen again, I guess, until the 18th way down there on the UNLV campus. So he might have been homeless. Where was he? Was he getting buses all over the place? I don't know. But I'm going to get into that in points number 2 and 3. But this is just point number 1. I think you can see what I'm saying here. We have some discrepancies. Most importantly, there's no way that he could have rode a bus that got him from Boulder Highway or Boulder City to Blue Diamond and South Durango in 45 minutes. That did not happen. All right, let's move on to points number 2 and 3. Okay, then let's move on to point number 2 now that the map section is done and point number 1 is done. Number 2, the view from the outside. It's very common for the public. People try to get into the head of the missing person. What was that person feeling? What was that person thinking? Trying to add some logic to it, some common sense to it. Of course, this is very applicable to Mason's disappearance because everybody's going to be trying to figure out, well, what was he doing? Why was he in Boulder City? Why did he take the bus into Las Vegas? Why was he out there at Blue Diamond Road in Durango? Why was he near the campus of UNLV? All very good questions trying to get into his head. This is probably a futile effort, unless Mason had actually called or texted people or something, detailing what his plans were. Then it'd be, of course, a lot easier to get inside his head. But even then, we have to remember something. I know I was the first guy, I think, to ever say this in the annals of true crime podcasting about missing people. Missing people lie. It is a fact. I cannot tell you how many disappearances that I've covered where obviously missing people lied to a lot of people before they went missing. So even if there is information out there about what Mason was saying or thinking and writing things down, texting, I don't know how much we could believe it anyway. The fact is he's still missing a month and a half later. We don't know what was going through his head. And in fact, I would say that a lot of time is wasted trying to get inside missing people's heads. In fact, it's, better off doing searches and things like that than trying to decipher what the person said if you sent texts or whatever else. I guess you have to go check it out. Certainly if John Smith says, hey, I'm going to go jump off this bridge, I guess you have to go to that bridge if there's cameras or something and check it. But it is amazing how much they lie. But for the record, we don't have any information like that for Mason. Once again, I only use the materials that are public. And frankly, I don't know anything more about Mason's disappearance than all of you do. I'm just here to publicize it, try to learn from it, try to pass along some educational points to all of you, give all of you some insight of what I think when I read a disappearance like this one, where there really isn't a ton of information. But what can we use from our experience of 360 disappearances and it applied to Mason's? Can we get more insight that way? That is going to help you a lot more than trying to get inside that particular missing person's head. Rely on the experience. Don't try to be a psychic or something like that. Even if they write notes, you can't believe it. One of the main reasons, is that a lot of times, and it very well may be this way with Mason, very possible, I'm not sure, people have mental health issues. When people have mental health issues, they do a lot of lying. Could be addiction issues. When people are all high and everything else and drunk, they are much, 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 much more likely to lie. And also sometimes they may be totally, totally sober, not high, anything, but they don't want to be found. That's another reason they lie. So we're viewing them from the outside, and we have to realize that what we're thinking in our heads and trying to decipher what their heads may be worlds apart. And in fact, trying to use our common sense and logic and looking at what they're doing, we may come to a conclusion that is completely different from what they're thinking. Got it? It's a very important part of understanding disappearances. My belief, of course, everybody has something in his or her head. And certainly Mason had something on his mind. But how do you decipher that? In addition, we don't know if he was in his right mind at all. It very well may be he's on that bus, but he thinks he's in a limo. He's not understanding reality. We just don't know. That's just an example. We don't know why. It seems probable that maybe he got off at that bus at Blue Diamond, Durango, because he knows somebody in that area. That's what's logical, but that doesn't mean that's what Mason was thinking. It's very, very important. You know, we don't know why, at least publicly, why he went into Las Vegas. And trying to figure that out is a waste of time. Unless somebody he knew near where he got off the bus, but we're a month and a half into this, and I think if he knew somebody near that bus stop or near UNLV, I think that would have been figured out by now, 45 days later. He's still missing. Now, some good unfound examples, probably the best one is Mara Murray. You know, it's weird to me, everybody trying to figure out where she was going when we know she didn't get there. You can say make a lot of different points about Mara Murray's disappearance. Here's one thing we know. She didn't get where she was going. And very well maybe she just decided to ride around the state of New Hampshire and really had no destination except driving back to UMass. That is possible. There are no facts to dispute that. I'm not saying I necessarily believe that, but there are no facts to dispute that. But the amount of time that has been spent over the years trying to figure out where she was going has proven to be a waste of time. That should teach all of us something. I can understand early on, maybe, but the fact is her car was up against a certain tree, and there's no proof that anybody picked her up. Trying to figure out where she was going is not going to help find her, is the point. If you want to try to find her, you got to put to the side where you think she was going. I know that sounds counterintuitive or sounds contradictory, but it's very counterintuitive. Ronald McNutt, he dropped off, was it his grandson or nephew at school, never went to work. No idea why he drove off. All that matters is that his truck was found after a forest fire and remains were in it, and it was burned so badly that DNA could not be taken off the remains. But I don't think anybody disputes that that's Ronald McNutt in his truck. Now, what was he doing out there in the middle of nowhere? Where was he going? What was in his head? All useless to try to figure out. All we know is we now know he was there. Also, we have Yelena Carisi. This is, of course, the young woman from Italy who went missing in the 1990s, seemingly in New Orleans. And a lot of people spending time thinking about, why would she ever go back to New Orleans and hang out with that guy that was on the verge of being homeless? Why is a young woman like that with all this going for her, why is she doing that? We talked about it in the episode when it came out, but in the end, I don't know how helpful that is, because that guy was tracked down and she wasn't with him. And even if we knew what she had said to somebody, I'm not sure that it would make any sense to any of us as well. Anyway. So, common sense, logic, trying to decipher what's in missing people's heads. It's a questionable pursuit. All we can do is look at probabilities, and that is based on what we know about other disappearances and applying them to the disappearance that is in front of us at this moment. And I'm going to do that at the end when I do the analysis for Mason's disappearance. So let's now move on to point number 3, searching high and very low. What you need to know about Las Vegas, and I learned this, I didn't know, I lived there for 13 and a half years, and I don't think that I learned about this until maybe halfway through my time there. And there's a reason I think it's important to note. It took a little while for me to know this. There is a huge tunnel system under Las Vegas. It did not exist when I moved there. Why does this tunnel system exist? It exists to funnel water from the west side of town to the east side of town. You have to remember something or realize something about Las Vegas, and you would only know that really if you drive around it quite a bit, is that where Las Vegas is not flat. You get down there, like where I lived at East Tropicana, and you start driving west toward Las Vegas Boulevard, the Strip, it is uphill the whole way. Now, it does maybe flatten out right in that area where Las Vegas Boulevard is, but I think that's just because of all the work that has been done to flatten that out so you can put buildings there and pools and everything else and arenas now. But you go from East Tropicana west, you go uphill the whole way. You get to Las Vegas Boulevard, you keep going west. Once again, uphill the whole way. And then you can see the mountains off in the distance. Well, what used to happen when it would rain, of course, it does not rain very often in Las Vegas. So they really, when they were building the city, never put in any drainage, sewage, nothing like that. Of course, sewage for houses and everything, but actually rainwater and everything, nothing. But as Las Vegas got bigger and got more spread out and everything, what started happening is when it would rain, or when the snow would melt in those mountains to the west, because they are high enough above sea level for snow to get onto the mountains. And of the 13 years I lived in Las Vegas, it snowed about out of 50% of the winters. It snowed actually in Las Vegas when I lived there. But what would happen is when the water would melt or would rain, the water that's on the west side would really, 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 really want to get to the east side of Las Vegas really fast. Well, what happens when you don't have any gutters and any pipes underneath the ground for this water? It goes right down the streets, and I saw it. I saw it when I first moved there. Just floods all over the place. That pretty much went away by the time I moved away from there in 2011. Because what they did, of course, you really couldn't see it because it was all underground. They built a sewage system. They built a rainwater system underneath the city. So when the water would come down from the west, it would be funneled into these pipes that would then dump out on the east side of town, so there wouldn't be any floods. And, of course, the water eventually goes to Lake Mead. That's where it goes. But because this only happens like 5 times a year, what has happened? The homeless people have moved into these areas underneath the city because they're so big, because they need to carry a lot of water, and humans can actually stand up inside these pipes. And I'm calling them pipes, but they're really like rectangles. I want you to think they're all like circular pipes, so we usually think of pipes. They're actually waterways. Like, imagine like the Las Vegas River you've seen in many movies that's cement. It's like that, but underground. And what do these homeless people do? They go down there and they live. Nobody's going to bother them. They know that they can predict when the water's going to come through because they know when the rain's coming, when the weather's coming. They know when that's going to happen, so they can move out before the water comes rushing through. And because it's Las Vegas, about half the year, you don't want to be outside if you're homeless. It's nice and cool down there. They live down there. And there have been many, many articles written over the last 20 years about this. And I don't think the city's really doing anything about it. And so when you start thinking about trying to figure out where Mason McKay might be, this is why I said searching high and very, very low. I'm talking about, you have to think about looking underground when you're searching in Las Vegas, because of this phenomenon that has just been created over the last 20 to 25 years. The big issue, though, is the question we have to ask is, did Mason know about this? Did he go to Las Vegas? What was in his mind? We don't know. I've already been through that. But I think it's a possibility. I don't know if it's a probability, but it's a possibility he went to Las Vegas and he's been missing for 45 days and he's most likely homeless. It's a good place to start. This is not something, I don't know how many cities in the United States you could even talk about this. We know there are homeless encampments all over cities in the United States, from California to Pennsylvania to New York to Florida to Texas, all over the place. I don't know how many of those have a homeless city underground. So that's what I mean. So that's point number 3, searching high and very low. It's one of the cities where if you're going to do searches, you have to go underground. All right, now I'm going to do a little analysis of Mason's disappearance. Now, to start this analysis, you should know, I'll be going over this in the next update episode for the podcast at the end of April. The last 3 Unfound Now episodes, the people involved in them who have been covered, those disappearances have all been resolved, and unfortunately, these people were all found deceased, including the most recent one, Belvedere. She was unfortunately found. Our car was found wrecked. She was found deceased. I don't know if anybody's surprised by that. But you should also know, I predicted the correct results in all 3 of those cases that were unsolved, of course, when I featured them on Unfound Now. So my record predicting the resolutions to disappearances, both between the podcast and the Unfound Nows, is very, very high. It's well into the 90% range. So remember that as I go through this analysis. Most important thing we have to remember is that it's still very, very early. He just disappeared 45 days ago. I realize for the people who know and care about Mason and are emotionally invested in his life, all of that, I know the last 45 days have been terrible. But it's only 45 days. And this is a much different 45 days than Belvedere, who was 90-some years old, riding around by herself, seemingly lost, maybe not. This is different than that. Now, I realize that it sounds like Mason needs his medication. That's not a good sign. It sounds like this is medication that needs to be taken daily, maybe not daily, but maybe every few days. This is not, we have to always make a stipulation here. All of us take all kinds of medications. Some we really, really, really got to take, and then other ones we can not take it for a few days or even weeks or maybe even months, and it's really not going to affect us that much. For example, people who are diabetic, yes, you got to take your insulin every day or you're going to die. Yes. But, for example, cholesterol medicine, most people can go without it for a while. Now, yes, that could eventually have some bad results. But you could go for days, weeks, months, I don't know, years. But that's not necessarily something you need to take every day, even though you should take it every day. So we really have to make a stipulation. There's all different kinds of medications, and how long you can go without them depends. It depends on what they do and how much and what they do to help you. It sounds to me like Mason's medication were the kind that he needed to take quite often, and I think that's why it gets mentioned in the news regarding his disappearance. So that's worrisome. But on the other hand, maybe Mason found some way to get that medication. Maybe. But I should say, I think there's a good chance that he is still alive. Certainly a better chance that he's alive after 45 days than Belvet Day and some of the other people who have been featured on Unfound now. The tough part is that I don't know much about Mason. I'm only going with the public information, and as I've said many times, disappearances are about people, not about circumstances. And I just don't have a good feel for Mason. It doesn't even say, does he have any kids? Has he ever been married? Who is he living with in Boulder City? Has he ever done this before? We don't know. We don't know. I'll also say that if this were happening during the summer, if this was in July in Las Vegas instead of in February into March, I would be much more negative on Mason's prospects of being alive. Las Vegas summers will kill you. Will kill you. I lived there for 13 and a half years. That is not weather to be messed with. Florida weather is just uncomfortable. You get sweaty, your clothes stay wet, the humidity and everything else, but it's not going to necessarily kill you. Las Vegas weather has the potential to kill anybody because it's so dang hot and so dang dry. It will dehydrate you in no time. The good news is, though, it's February and March. And if you're going to go to Vegas, that's the time to go to Vegas. Like February, March into April, or like October, November, because it does get cold in Las Vegas too. So those are the best times to go. So that's also something to think about. So the further we get into this year and we get closer to the summer and Mason hasn't been found yet, then we have to start thinking, well, maybe this is going to get tougher for him to survive if he is still alive. We also have to remember he's a 44-year-old guy. He's not a 95-year-old woman. If he were a woman of 44 and walking away from a bus and nobody knows where she is, the prospects of a woman being alive after this time is much lower. There's much more chance you might run into somebody who would rape her and kill her. A lot of different things that can happen to women on the streets than can happen to men. So at this point, I'm fairly hopeful. Yes, there is a decent possibility that Mason is no longer with us. But the way I'm thinking about it right now, there's certainly over a 50% chance. And that's what, when it comes to disappearances, that's considered a good chance. I know that doesn't sound like the greatest thing ever. But there's at least a 50% chance that Mason is still alive out there somewhere. Problem is, he might not even be in Las Vegas anymore. So, that's the best I can do with this analysis. Certainly worth looking for him. I don't think anybody has to start going to the morgue yet to see unidentified bodies. I don't think we're to that point yet. If we get into May, June, July, then that, of course, is going to be much more. It might be something that needs to be considered, but I don't think we're there yet. So that's my in-depth analysis as best as I can do. For the disappearance of Mason McKay, went missing in Las Vegas February 18th of 2025. He's a white guy. He's 44 years old. And last seen, whether it's near UNLV or down there at South Durango and Blue Diamond Road, in either of those areas, he was seen in either of those areas. So keep your eyes peeled. Thanks for listening. Please give this episode a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to this channel. I'll talk to you again next month.